We begin with the aftermath of Hurricane Ian, and this morning the impact of the storm is still growing a week after it made landfall.
That's right. The number of people confirmed dead from the storm is rising, now at least 100 people, nearly all of them in Florida. Search and rescue teams were out again yesterday in hard-hit areas like Lee County, where power remains out in hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses. President Biden is pledging his support for the hard-hit area, and while visiting Puerto Rico yesterday to tour the destruction from Hurricane Fiona just 2 weeks ago, he promised to provide support to the island as well.
We came here in person to show that we're with you. All of America is with you as you receive and recover and rebuild.
The president and the first lady have returned from Puerto Rico and will visit Florida tomorrow to assess the damage from Ian. We're covering the latest on the storm's aftermath from all angles. We'll get to weather with Michelle in just a moment. But first, let's get to NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns and NBC News White House correspondent Carol Lee. Dasha, friend, it's good to see you. So let's start with you. I know you're on the ground right now. What's the latest on rescue and cleanup efforts there?
Well, look, Zinkley, every morning we come to you guys from in front of a new pile of rubble because these scenes, like this one behind me, they are endless around here. And this just starts to give you a sense of the scope and the scale of the rescue and search and recovery efforts here. Let me give you a couple of numbers to help paint that picture. FEMA tells us that they have a total of 17 urban search and rescue task forces out, 104 boat squads, more than 60 canines in the field, and a total of over 1,200 personnel and counting. And yesterday we also spent some time with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who are going out and assessing the damage below the water, guys. This is how complicated the picture is, right? There's the damage that you see on the surface in front of us here, and then there's so many other factors that people don't even think about. Under the water, there's debris, there are sunken boats, and in order to do those search and rescue efforts, get folks off those barrier islands we've been talking about, Sanibel Island, Pine Island, they need to get boats to come rescue people, to bring supplies and resources, and they can't do that if those channels under the water aren't clear. So the Army Corps of Engineers is working on that, trying to restore power, trying to restore water and make sure the sewage systems are back up and running. There's still so much to get done in this urgent short term before you can even start thinking about the long-term recovery process here.
So much for those first responders to have to navigate. And Dasha, I also wanted to ask, we've been talking about the growing questions about just when evacuation orders were issued for Lee County, if they came too late. And I understand officials there are now pushing back on those allegations.
Yeah, you know, a lot of the folks that we talk to here say this storm just came in so fast. It's Florida. People have seen hurricanes here. They know what these things look like, what happens, what the process is. But a lot of people telling us this was not what they expected at all. And there are a lot of factors to that, of course. But yeah, officials are pushing back on allegations that there wasn't enough lead time for people to get out. Take a listen.
I believe that Lee County and their administration, to include their emergency management director, fire chiefs, and sheriff, made the best decision they felt was right for their community at that time.
We should be focusing on lifting people up and stop incessantly talking and trying to cast aspersions on people that were doing the best job they could with imperfect information.
No, Zinkley, what I'll say is the folks that I've talked to, you know, couples who don't have small children, who don't have any complications, say that they probably could have gotten out in time if they were quicker on their feet. But if you have small kids, if you have disabilities, if you have any sort of complications, it's those individuals that had a much harder time getting out before the worst of it came.
Yeah, time really matters when we're talking about natural disasters like this. And Carol, I want to bring you in. It's great to see you. So as I mentioned, the president toured damage in Puerto Rico yesterday, and during that, he announced $60 million in federal funding for the island. So what exactly will that money go towards?
That's right. This is $60 million from the bipartisan infrastructure law, and it's intended to go toward helping Puerto Rico prepare for future storms. So going toward things like shoring up levees, creating a new flood warning system, and strengthening flood walls, things like that. And President Biden said these sorts of investments are critical because Puerto Rico is already still struggling to recover and get back on its feet from Hurricane Maria. Take a listen.
After Maria, Congress approved billions of dollars for Puerto Rico, much of it not having gotten here initially. We're going to make sure you get every single dollar promised. And I'm determined to help Puerto Rico build faster than in the past and stronger and better prepared for the future.
President Biden also promised more money in the future for things like that power grid that's been so critical and has really struggled in Puerto Rico, and other types of investments into roads and bridges. So we'll see that money in the future.
And Carol, I know Biden has another state, an area to visit because of natural disaster, Florida. What can we expect from his visit to look at the hurricane damage?
That's right. He's heading to Florida tomorrow with the First Lady, and they're expected to tour some of the damage, to meet with state and local officials, to thank first responders, or similar to these previous trips that we've seen the president take. Now, optically, one of the things that people will be interested to watch is the president, any interaction between him and Governor Ron DeSantis, just given their political sparring in the background. But the White House says that is not the focus of this trip, that this trip is focused on Florida and making sure that Floridians have the resources that they need.
Important reporting from both of you. Dasha, Carol, thank you both so much.
And let's stay on this and get the latest with a check on your Morning News Now weather.
Meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us now for more. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning to you both. And we are still watching the remains of Ian impacting the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, portions of New England with some really heavy rain. It's a cold, dreary, rainy day, windy too. We're going to see that all throughout this Tuesday and the early part of Wednesday before we finally clear it out later on Wednesday. So taking a look at radar, we're looking at heavy rain falling in spots where you see those yellows and reds, especially the oranges too. That's where we're seeing pockets of heavy rain. So it's a tough go this morning in terms of your commute, probably a better work from home day. We're looking at that spin right off the ocean. It's a coastal low. It's what's left over from Ian. It's cut off from the jet stream and sort of just spinning off the coast, and will continue to do so over the next 24 hours. Here is the setup for you. Those rainy, windy, and cool conditions continue. And we do have the risk for coastal flooding once again, especially in those low-lying locations. We saw some flooding in portions of the Jersey Shore. We're going to see that once again today, anywhere from New England down to portions of Virginia, and then it slowly pulls away. You notice that area of low pressure pulling off to the right, pulling away slowly tomorrow, but showers still lingering from Maryland to eastern Maine, and then we'll start to see improvement later Wednesday and especially Thursday. 16 million at risk for coastal flooding. Notice where you see the green, that's a coastal flood advisory. The red is a coastal flood warning, so portions of New Jersey, also Delaware. 1 to 2 feet of inundation is possible. That's going to cause some flooded road streets. We're seeing that this morning. We saw it yesterday. We will see it once again this afternoon, and also the possibility of some damaged properties. In terms of the rainfall, anywhere from 1 to 3 inches. We could see higher amounts, but locally we're going to see around 2 inches. Again, where you see that yellow, the oranges, the reds, that's where we're seeing the highest amounts expected. Winds will be gusting. We're already seeing breezy conditions. It's a really dreary day out there, so winds gusting up to 37 miles per hour, and that's that onshore push. It's the onshore push that's causing the coastal flooding as well. Virginia Beach seeing wind gusting into the 30-mile-per-hour range, too. And it's keeping the temperatures low. It feels more like November today. It feels like it's going to be 55 in Salisbury, Maryland, 19 degrees below normal for this time of year, 22 degrees below normal in D.C. at 50 degrees, 57 in Elkins, Maryland. And then as we go throughout tomorrow, a little bit warmer. Temperatures in the 60s in New York City. Notice that warm air, though, guys, off to the west. That's going to be moving in. We're going to be a little bit warmer as we head towards Thursday and Friday. Back to you.
All right, Michelle, thank you so much, and we'll check in with you in a bit. And now to the Supreme Court and the start of a new era. The first oral arguments of this term were heard yesterday. It was a historic day at the High Court as newly sworn-in Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson took her place on the bench for the first time. This is also the first time 4 women have presided over the court. NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell joins us now with the latest from this day. Hey, Kelly, good morning. So let's start with the new justice on the court. Ketanji Brown Jackson was an active participant, actually, on her first day on the job as the Supreme Court heard a challenge regarding wetlands regulation. What can you tell us about that, and just kind of walk us through what we saw from her, what her role was like yesterday, and if it gives us any clues as how she'll be as a justice?
Well, being inside the courtroom for that oral argument, it was interesting to see when Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson first spoke up and began asking questions of the lawyers who were arguing the case, because it was the first chance to see her in action, engaging with the lawyers, showing her knowledge of the case, and working with her colleagues on the bench. And at times, some of the other justices who have more seniority on the Supreme Court referenced things that Justice Jackson said and worked that into some of their own questioning. And she clearly knew the case well, as you would expect. She's obviously got a lot of experience coming onto the high court. And what was notable about it in some ways is the first day you might expect someone would sort of take it all in, perhaps sit back and watch how others did. She jumped right in and was fully engaged and participating. And it was a lively debate over an issue that in some ways is very technical, but has far-reaching impacts for people who own property in areas where there are wetlands that are potentially regulated by the federal government. So we learned a lot in that court session about what it means to be adjacent to a federally regulated wetland. And there was a lot of back and forth about the definitions the government would use. And Justice Jackson was asking the lawyer representing the people bringing this case, and it's been a long time fight against the EPA. Remember, a conservative court here, the justices who might be inclined to say less regulation. Justice Jackson is a part of the 3 justices on the liberal wing, so she doesn't change the balance. She was asking some questions about would those homeowners who purchased the land have had some advance warning about the fact that the property they were buying was a wetland and could have potentially been subject to this sort of regulation. So the particulars of that case will be known over time. What really stood out to me, Savannah, was that she was an active participant right from the start of her first case in oral argument.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kelly, also quickly, the Supreme Court made one of its first rejections as well. This involved the MyPillow CEO in connection with the 2020 election. Tell us what happened there and where it goes from here.
One of the standard things the court does at the beginning of the term is puts out a list of cases that they are either going to accept or reject, and they rejected the case of Mike Lindell, who has been a very prominent, regular rally goer, almost a star at the rallies for former President Trump. He has a defamation case that Dominion Voting Systems has brought against him because of his allegations that have been repeatedly known to be false about Dominion Voting Systems having improperly dealt with the 2020 election. He was trying to get the Supreme Court to take that case, and they said no. They rejected that. So a lower court will still go forward with Dominion suing Mike Lindell for defamation. That's one of the prominent cases that certainly popped off the page of many that the court was either accepting or rejecting yesterday. Savannah?
Also, look ahead to today. The Supreme Court is set to hear arguments on an Alabama case that could potentially affect voting rights in the U.S. more broadly. What should we know about it?
This will be one of the marquee cases of this term. And so as we learn more about how it unfolds today, this will dominate a lot of headlines. Voting rights in Alabama, when you think of all the ways that that could affect American life and how the issues of elections are so important in our national debate right now, this is a case where they're looking at Alabama and the electoral map there. And did the state legislature rewrite that map in a way that put black voters at a disadvantage by putting their concentrated power in just one congressional district, when across the state they actually represent almost 30% of the population, but they have the strongest representation in only one congressional district? That's part of what will play out today. We'll hear the oral arguments. This will be a case that people will be watching significantly. The court had previously already taken apart some of the 1965 landmark voting rights case. This is another in the line of that. And so it's one of the most watched cases of this term. And so this is a big day. There are already people lined up all across the street here, right to my right and my left here, waiting for some of the public seats to attend today's oral argument, because the court, for the first time in 2.5 years, is back open with some limited seating for the public after pretty tight COVID restrictions. Savannah?
So much to watch for there. And some people, like you said, will get to see it in person. Kelly O'Donnell, thanks so much.
And we want to take a closer look at two major cases the court will hear this term. Joining us now to discuss that is Professor Susan Carl. She's a law professor at American University. Professor, thank you for being here. So later this month, the court will hear arguments for two cases related to affirmative action, one involving Ivy League Harvard and the other involving the University of North Carolina, and whether or not they can use race as one of the factors in admissions. So can you just simply walk us through these cases and the impact a ruling like this could have on diversity, equity, and inclusion at universities?
Sure. So there, as you mentioned, there are two cases. One involves a private university, Harvard University. The second involves a public university. And so there are two provisions at issue. One is a statute called Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race in any program receiving federal money. So that would be every college and university in the United States. And the second one also involves the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, because that applies in a public university context. And the question is whether these schools can look at race as one of many factors in making individualized admissions decisions. So what both the universities say is that they don't discriminate on the basis of race, that they try to look at the whole person. And since race is a factor in a person's experiences and backgrounds in the United States today, they consider as one of many factors a person's race or their experience with race as they were children. Yeah.
And Professor, it's not lost on me that many experts say the outcome could have a ripple effect on diversity and inclusion programs beyond just academics. A decision in this case could have an impact on the workplace as well, right? Can you talk to us about that?
Absolutely, yes. So especially around the Title VI issue, because Title VI of the Civil Rights Act is worded basically exactly the same as the part of the Civil Rights Act that prohibits discrimination in employment, which is Title VII. It is very likely that what the court says about race and consideration of race as a soft factor or one of many factors in college admissions would also apply to questions in the workplace about hiring, promotion, that kind of thing. So this is likely to be the case in which the court articulates its views about how race can be used in decision-making, both in college admissions and then later in employment.
And Professor, quickly, this would be another chance for the Supreme Court to overturn precedent, just as they did with Roe v. Wade. Do you think if affirmative action is essentially overturned, it could mean current diversity and inclusion programs, academically and professionally, could be just thrown out?
Yes, it will have a gigantic impact, because the court has, in a series of cases, said in the past that race can be used in a soft way. It cannot be the deciding factor in any of these important decisions, but that in considering a holistic picture of a person, race can be one of the factors that is attended to. And if the court says, overrules that, knocks that down, it will be knocking down sort of a series of cases that both schools and employers have relied on for decades.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely a case a lot of us are watching. So thank you, Professor Susan Carl, for breaking it down.
Now let's get to the latest on the January 6th attack on the Capitol. A major legal battle got underway inside a D.C. courtroom yesterday as opening statements were presented in the trial of 4 members of the Oath Keepers and their leader, Stuart Rhodes.
The members of the far-right militia group are being tried for seditious conspiracy for their alleged involvement in the attack on the Capitol on January 6th.
We've got our all-star team back from yesterday, NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley and NBC News legal analyst Danny Sabales. They are here to break down the first day of the trial for all of us. Ryan, I will start with you. Good morning. Good to have you. So what were some of the biggest takeaways from yesterday's opening statements?
a little bit of a surprise up their sleeve, because we had heard a lot of the statements previously that a lot of members of the Oath Keepers had made via text message, but what they had was this recording from January 10th, 2021, that featured the head of the Oath Keepers, Stuart Rhodes, saying that he wished they had brought guns to the Capitol on January 6th. So that sort of undermines the defense that has been brought forward by Stuart Rhodes, basically saying that, oh, this was only, basically set up for if Donald Trump took action, we were ready to spring into action if he invoked the Insurrection Act. We were a militia that was going to take over. So they're basically trying to frame this as though this was some sort of legal response, but prosecutors are saying that basically this wasn't dependent on what Donald Trump was going to do. They were going to go into the Capitol. In fact, they did go into the Capitol anyway with those two stacks that went into the Capitol, even though Donald Trump did not, in fact, invoke the Insurrection Act, which is what they were what they claim they were basing their action plan on there.
Really interesting. And Danny, I want to bring you in here because in previous trials with the Oath Keepers, prosecutors attempted to draw a connection between them and the Trump administration. Do we think that's happening again?
Trump, of course, looms large in this case, among the other cases as well. But Trump is a mixed bag for prosecutors here, because if they emphasize Trump too much, the defendants can point to Trump and say, hey, the president made me do this. I was following orders from the president. Will it be effective? Probably not, but it might give the defense another hook to hang their theory of non-liability on.
Yeah, let's talk about the defense. Ryan, what kind of strategy did defense attorneys for the Oath Keepers present yesterday? What do we hear so far?
It's really a mixed bag. I think, for Stuart Rhodes is essentially throwing some of the other Oath Keepers under the bus and say, hey, I didn't tell them to go inside the Capitol. You don't have any evidence of me telling them to do that. And that's basically what his plan is going to be. I think for some of these other defendants like Thomas Webster, it's going to be more of, hey, I'm not that much of a threat. This was all a lot of big talk. He's really going to emphasize his age, I think, is going to be a major component of this. He's had some health issues recently, and inside the courtroom, you're going to see him in a special chair. He has a cane with him. So that's certainly something that I think that they're certainly not trying to hide any health issues that he has from the jury to essentially make him out to be less than a lethal threat in terms of this ongoing prosecution.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and Danny, I know there's some new reporting. Two sources familiar with the matter say that the House committee investigating the January 6th attack will hold another public hearing. How do you think this Oath Keepers trial might impact that?
They're going to watch it because the reality is the January 6th committee doesn't have a fraction of the investigative ability that the DOJ and the FBI has. I mean, investigation is literally in the name of the FBI. It's the I. So they are much better at gathering information than the January 6th committee. They have search warrants, they have subpoenas, they have all kinds of methods that January 6th committee just doesn't have. Even though January 6th committee is much splashier, much more dramatic, and they put on a good show, they are watching closely to see if there's anything new that they may have missed.
Right, they got the primetime addresses, but it sounds like this has the substance, so we'll be watching closely.
Danny, we love you. FBI. Thank you very much. Ryan, also, thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.